So continuing on with this idea of photosynthesis, photosynthesis happens in two phases. Phase one is also called the light-dependent reaction, and it's called light-dependent because it needs the energy from photons in order to excite electrons. So light-dependent reactions, as the name implies, require light. They are the photo part of photosynthesis. So the power of sunlight excites electrons in pigment molecules. Those are those chloroplasts that we were looking at earlier. And excited electrons are carried down what's called a transport chain of redox reactions, kind of like those that happen in mitochondria. And we're going to be looking at mitochondria later on. I just thought it was smarter or easier to start with photosynthesis. Where do the sugars come from that we're using to drive cellular respiration? But let's take a step back. We're not talking about cellular respiration right now. So phase one is these light-dependent reactions. They need light. They need the energy from sunlight in order to excite an electron. So that's kind of the first point of this, is getting an electron excited. So after you've excited an electron, that energy, that electron is transferred down a chain, and that energy is used to create a gradient of hydrogen ions. And a gradient here is kind of like that idea we were talking about with diffusion. So you're going to have a high concentration on one side of hydrogen ions. And those hydrogen ions are going to be used to create ATP. And electrons, it says maybe, but we can kind of think of it as those electrons are going to be transferred to NAD to make NADP+. Okay? Those pigment electrons are then replaced by electrons which are stripped from water, making O2. That's a huge idea here. So an electron is excited. Remember, an electron, those are those negatively charged particles around an atom. An electron is excited by a photon, and when that electron goes away, there is a sort of a hole in its place. There's something missing from that chlorophyll. And so the plant says, okay, well, I need to get that electron back, so it takes an electron from water. And when it takes an electron from water, it's going to make some hydrogen ions, and it's going to also make oxygen gas. It's going to make the stuff that you need to continue surviving. The second phase is also called the light-dependent reactions. And ATP and NADPH are not good for the permanent storage of energy. So what plants are going to do is convert that energy into glucose molecules, where it can store them for a longer period of time. Plants also use carbohydrates that it creates from photosynthesis for other things, like glycogen, like starch. It's going to use it to build cell membranes. It's going to use it to do all kinds of stuff beyond just glucose. And electrons that are excited during that first phase are brought together with CO2 and water to make glucose. So again, stage one, you're exciting that electron, you're making some ATP, you're making some NADPH, and you're going to take those electrons and you're going to put CO2, H2O together to make glucose. So kind of going further into this, you have these photosystems. These photosystems are these working units that help you to absorb solar energy. So pigment molecules kind of serve as antenna by which the plant can actually absorb this solar energy. And at the center of a photosystem, you have reaction centers, which contain chlorophyll molecules. And those chlorophyll molecules have electrons that are absorbing the energy from the sun. Those electrons are getting excited, and then they're ultimately going to be, those electrons are going to be transferred to electron carrier molecules. So this is just a picture of a photosystem. You can see sunlight coming in here, hitting these antenna pigments, and then this chlorophyll molecule here at the center of this reaction, at this reaction center, its electron is going to jump up in energy. It's going to jump up in energy and get taken up by an electron acceptor. So The reason that this kind of energy transfer is possible is because of redox reactions. So one substance is losing an electron, which is also called oxidized, and another is gaining an electron, which is called reduction. Something I'm going to write on the board this week, and something that I find incredibly useful for remembering this, is this term oil rig. O-I-L-R-I-G. Oil standing for oxidation is loss. So whenever you lose an electron, you're getting oxidized. Rig, which stands for reduction, is gain. Whenever you gain an electron, you're getting reduced. So something loses an electron, it gets oxidized. Oxidation is lost. Something else gains an electron, it is reduced. Reduction is gain. So it says electrons move down this energy hill, losing energy as they go. The final recipient of the electron is NADP+, which is going to turn into NADPH. So just to review what we've talked about already, light is coming in, it's hitting that photosystem, it is exciting an electron. So that chlorophyll is getting oxidized because it's losing it, and then an energy carrier molecule is getting reduced because it's picking that electron up and moving it to somewhere else. So here's another picture. Sunlight comes in, it excites this electron, and then as I talked about previously, this pigment here is going to be missing an electron, and it's not super happy that it's missing an electron. In order to replace that electron, it's going to get it from water. It's going to replace its electron from water. And when it does that, it's going to generate oxygen, which is super important. Okay? That is the reason that you're alive, is because of photosynthesis. It's because this reaction here in photosystem 2 is happening. So this electron is going to get excited. It's going to go to this primary electron acceptor, which is like a protein. You don't have to worry about what that is necessarily. It's going to fall back down the energy hill here, and then it's going to excite photosystem 2, which is going to kick off another electron, which is ultimately going to, this electron is going to be attached, or this hydrogen is going to be attached to NADP+, which is going to turn into this high energy NADPH, which is going to go to the Calvin cycle. So the light-dependent reactions are basically this. Photosystem 2 absorbs solar energy. An electron jumps up from that chlorophyll, and it goes to a primary electron acceptor. In the meantime, chlorophyll doesn't have an electron, okay? And that chlorophyll is going to grab an electron from water, which is going to split it into H+ and O2, which again is incredibly important for your survival. So that ejected electron falls back down the energy hill. It is excited, it's going to become high energy, and it's going to come down the energy hill via a series of electron transfer molecules and a number of redox reactions. Redox here stands for reduction oxidation, which has to do with electrons being transferred around. And it's going to go from photosystem 2 to photosystem 1. Energized electrons from photosystem 1 are going to be again transferred down the energy hill until they encounter NADP+, which is an electron carrier, and that electron carrier is going to be sent to the Calvin cycle. Okay, so travel took place from the thylakoid to the stroma. And the stroma, again, is just the fluid that exists inside of a chloroplast. And a chloroplast, remember, is a membrane-bound organelle that exists inside of a plant cell. So here it is. Here is just kind of an overview. Light comes in, hits photosystem 2, it excites this electron, and it also creates oxygen. This electron is taken by an electron carrier via the electron transport chain to photosystem 1, and then photosystem 1 is ultimately going to generate NADPH, which goes to the Calvin cycle. It's also kind of important to notice where these different things are happening. So this is happening inside the thylakoid compartment, inside the inner part of the chloroplast here. Okay, and then this electron, this high energy thing, is going to be transferred out here to the stroma, which is just the region inside the chloroplast here, and it's going to go to the Calvin cycle. So light-dependent reactions are important because they form oxygen, and energy or energized electrons, these electrons that are energized by the sun, are transferred to NADPH. Some ATP is also formed during this phase, which is used to power the light-independent reactions. So here are the light-independent reactions. We're going to talk about these in the next video.